Welcome to Thriver Talks with Stephanie and Nally. I'm Nally.
And I'm Stephanie.
And today is episode 18 on faith and spirituality.
We get a lot of questions asking like what our religious background is. Are we religious? Are we spiritual? And it's a really loaded question. So today on our episode, we're going to talk about what our personal belief systems are.
So without further ado, here is episode 18.
18.
What? All right. Faith and spirituality. Where do
I was really
begin?
excited to record this one because this is something so important. I know not just to me, but to you as well. But
it's something I've
excited.
been diving deeper into, as well as I feel like it's something that also interests me more than ever. As you know, a lot of people who follow me know I host healing circles and full moon circles. And it just confuses a bit of people because they're like, okay, so what are your beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people know that I also go to church and that I'm Filipino and that we're very religious. So we thought it was a really important episode to record and to discuss openly with you all. So maybe Steph, how did you, I'm curious, actually, I don't even know this, but how were you brought up, for one?
So my father raised me, and he was at the time through most of my childhood and adolescence a single father. So, and he was a captain on the Los Angeles Police Department. So he worked a lot. And so with my father, we never really did anything religious. Like he never took me to church, but he always wore this really big, and my dad's Mexican, and he always wore this really big, like gold cross on his neck, and he'd always hold it. And I have those memories since a little girl. So I knew he had faith, and I'd ask him, Dad, like, what are we? Are we Christian? Are we Catholic? And he would always tell me that I don't believe in religion. More people have died in the name of religion than anything in the world. And to me, that is not God. So I always remember him telling me that. But on the contrary, because he worked so much as a single father and being in charge of the LA Police Department, he's always on call and leaving. I spent a lot of time with a friend of mine. Her name was also Stephanie, and she lived in the neighborhood, and her family was super religious, like very Christian. So because I spent a lot of time with her family, I went to Sunday school with them. Sometimes every Wednesday we went to like a youth group. So in a sense, I grew up very Christian by default, not because it was instilled in me through family. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of like, if you would have asked me when I was 10 or 11 years old, I'd say I was Christian,
Were you baptized?
Never baptized. But what we went to, like this class we would go to every Wednesday, was called Awana. And I'd have to literally memorize passages in the Bible. And the more you memorize, the more that you could go to a camp. And every year I wanted to go to this camp. So I could probably recite more verses to you than you'd probably be like, whoa, really, Stephanie? But I could have it all like stored in my head, these Bible verses, but which I still hold on to. But I guess I had a very unique growing up situation. So we really weren't religious in my personal home, but I did have exposure to Christianity growing up.
Okay.
But my dad did have faith. It just didn't have a title. How about you? How was your upbringing?
As I mentioned often, I'm Filipino, and Filipinos are super Catholic. And so I was raised by my grandmother. Well, I was raised by my parents, but I never had a babysitter or a nanny in my entire life because my grandmother immigrated from the Philippines to Canada when my older brother was born. And my grandmother is a huge believer in God and Jesus and the Bible. And so I went to church every single Sunday. I went to Sunday school. I was baptized. I did my confirmation. I was full-on Catholic. I am still Catholic. And so, yes, I was pretty much raised with those Catholic traditions. But my parents have always been really open-minded in a sense where I feel like they always just they never really forced religion upon me, but they used religion to, I guess, raised me with values and
Mhm.
taught me about praying and just made me always feel safe, and that if ever I needed something, I could always turn to God. If ever I felt alone, I could always turn to God. And especially with the values of just, everyone is your brother and sister. We are a
Mhm.
community. Like church was literally our community. And so when I think of my upbringing, I think of that, the values that my parents instilled in me through with the church, with Catholicism. And yeah, always just feeling like I felt safe because of it.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as I got older, I
Mm-hmm.
because when I was able to explore more, like what is God, what is religion,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely was curious, because there's so many different religions. I grew up with like a lot of Jewish people in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely would go with friends, like on certain holidays, I'd go to the Catholic Church. I mean, most of my closest friends are Catholic, so I spent a lot of time like going to the Catholic Church and the beautiful ceremonies and the beautiful cathedrals and churches. Definitely like a beautiful religion. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess I guess what I'm trying to say is I think all religion is beautiful.
Yes.
No matter like what religion you are, I think it's beautiful, right?
And
Like
there's so many
everyone's beliefs,
commonalities
right?
between every religion. And me too. I've also, being from Montreal, it's so multicultural. And funny enough, like, fun fact, I dated like every religion. It's true.
Whoa,
I know,
that's a
right?
big statement.
But no, it's correct. Okay,
Where's V? Is he
almost
is he in
every
his
religion.
office?
Yeah, he is. Shh. Hopefully, he doesn't listen to Thriver Talks. He should, though. Anyways,
Yeah.
all to say, I've once dated a Muslim. I once dated a Buddhist, and now V's Hindu, and I
Oh
also
wow,
dated
yeah.
I'm speaking French now. Protestant. Is that?
Protestants.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Protestant. And yeah, and I'm Catholic. And it's crazy because I remember with my Muslim ex-boyfriend, that was an issue. So it was very like on the low, secret, because
So
that
crazy.
wasn't accepted. Muslims didn't. His parents and his community like didn't want him to date outside of his religion. So yeah, we actually broke up for those reasons. Even so, that's why that gave me a sour taste about religion
Mm-hmm.
around the age of 18 for those reasons. And I guess when you're 18, you're an adult and you start having your own values. And I think something else that kind of threw me off when it came to religion were just like specific rules about women. And then also I think the moment where I was just like, I personally, now that I'm 19, didn't want to go to church was when I think it was like Thanksgiving. And then my priest was like, oh, okay, so enjoy your meals where you're all going to go home and enjoy the dinners that your moms have cooked you or something like that. And I'm like, oh, but my dad actually cooks at my
And for
house.
me, that would have been like I only had my dad at that
Yeah.
time, like in
So,
the
so,
household.
so those traditions around it like made me kind of just question religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I had to do a lot of soul searching from there. So I guess for you, where do you feel like you stand when it comes to religion?
Now,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's hard to put into words or
Yeah.
articulate, but I guess I would say that, oops, malfunction. I guess I would say that I've taken bits and pieces from my personal
Mm-hmm.
journey um, through my own exploration with different religions. And like you, I dated people of different faith. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting now you're with V, who's Hindu, you're
Mm-hmm.
Catholic. Mark's Jewish, my partner. So we definitely
Yes.
have a very like integrated mixing
Diverse.
pot.
Absolutely.
Um, but I think through my exploration with God and religion, I personally, this is my own personal
Absolutely.
belief,
Mm-hmm.
came to the conclusion that I think we're all on the same path or an equivalent parallel path
Mm-hmm.
trying to do the same things through religion. Like we're all seeking God. We're on this path to return to God.
Yeah.
And we just call it different things. I know that may upset some people if I'm saying this wrong, but I think the big picture is we're all on different paths, called different things, trying to get to the same destination.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because my dad always told me, religion has, so many people have died in the name of God. Like my eyes were really open to that growing up, and I found a lot of truth in that. I personally felt like religion caused a lot of division,
Yeah.
like among people, and for me, I think God is love, and how could you kill somebody, in the name
Name
of
of
God?
God. Mm-hmm.
So that really was like set my foundation. So as I started to explore, I always believed in God. I always knew that there was something bigger than
Mm-hmm.
myself. I always prayed to God. I always thanked God. I said my prayers, but I never really, I think once I grew, after high school, and I grew a little bit apart from my friends and her really very strict Christian family,
Mm-hmm.
I started to, I don't know, I don't really identify with a religion. So when someone asks me, what's your religion? I wouldn't say Christian. Not to say I don't like adhere to Christian values
Mm-hmm.
or love some of the parts of Christianity. But I just think I just have a very close personal relationship with God. I try to be the best person I can be. I don't do unto others what I wouldn't want done unto me. I respect people. I go by essentially like the Ten Commandments and what um, the Bible would say, but I don't know, I just can't put myself into any box,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that especially when I got sick and when I got diagnosed, it's like, okay, well, no amount of money can save me. My parents can't save me. It's just me and God. And that's when my relationship with God got really strong, and it evolved to so much more than just my relationship with God. I started to believe in or know, well, I knew that God was always with me and close to my heart. And when I say God, I think that it's such a hard thing to put into words, huh?
It
This
is. It
topic.
is. It is.
But I always love this one quote that Oprah said, that if God were the ocean, we're all a cup of God.
Oh,
So I think that God is like all encompassing. God is everywhere. God is within us. God is
God is
everywhere.
all.
God is all.
Mm-hmm.
And God is love, right?
Yes.
So when I got diagnosed, I really clung to God and faith and knowing that there was something much bigger than myself and within myself guiding me on this journey. And I really started to obviously like knowing that all I had was God. Like, yes, of course, I had the love, the outpour of love and support from my family and friends. But when it really came down to like surviving and, getting through what I had to go through, it was God,
Yeah.
that I clung to.
Yeah.
So I think my relationship with God really deepened, definitely really deepened when I got diagnosed. Um, Prayer and meditation became like my foundation, my everyday rituals. Literally to this day, I know we said like before I have a scan, like I just have my ritual. I go in the bathroom and I pray, um, and even outside of that, like I was saying, like I started to become more spiritual in the sense that like I started being more open to learning about spirit guides and angels and all of these
Mm-hmm.
spiritual beings that are with us
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Um, so that would, so if someone were to ask me what's my religion, I would just say I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a child
Yeah.
of God. I am a believer of God, but I really can't put a label on myself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm such like God is everything to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you want to call that, but um, that's kind of like what I hold on to now. So what about you? You said that you would still like identify with Catholicism or Catholic?
I think that you said it best. I think that as when I say I identify to Catholicism is probably more so the fact that it's a traditional thing
Mm-hmm.
and because
Your
I
roots.
exactly it's my roots and it's my culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I cherish and that I'm proud of are my roots. So
Mm-hmm.
religion comes with that and it comes with all the holidays we celebrate and the rituals we have and I'm baptized, and when
Mm-hmm.
my niece was baptized, when my godchildren were baptized, and the meaning behind baptism is really just welcoming the light. And
Mm-hmm.
so we speak of this light. I feel like that's what I identify with. It's
Mm-hmm.
this light. It's understanding that we all have that light within us,
Mm-hmm.
and that light is always present. For whenever we are in darkness, there is always that light. So when it comes to religion, I feel like everything you just said, I agree with, because I feel like that's what all religions adhere to, all those values. At the end, we're all seeking for love and peace. And there's something, definitely something beyond us. Like, I feel like that's a difference between
100%.
spirituality and religion, and which is why I don't want to repeat everything you said, because you articulated it so beautifully, and I would repeat the same thing when it comes to my personal beliefs. But I feel like the difference between religion and spirituality is that the world doesn't revolve around us. We are part of the world, right?
Part of the one.
We are part of the one, exactly. So I don't know. I guess it's just about understanding that for spirituality, it's just realizing that everything has meaning, everything has purpose. We are here to serve, we are here to help others, we are here for a particular mission. Just living life knowing that it's kind of how I was brought up and how my parents brought me up. I feel like I'm never alone. I feel like I'm always supported. I feel like God's presence is always with me. I believe God is love. God is all. God is everything that is intangible. And
Mm-hmm.
for both you and I feel like we've been through so many unexplainable experiences that honestly, like, if we were to try to put it into words, and I guess that's what the Thriver's Guide is for when we write our book. You
Yeah.
guys, when you read our book, you will be amazed, because you're going to think that this is fiction, because there's so many things that have happened to us that there's
Like,
coincidence
there's no
is,
doubt.
yeah,
Like, how
that
could you
there's
doubt that there's something bigger than
bigger.
us?
There you go. Exactly. So that to me is why, especially now, I've been diving deeper, because I've experienced far too many miracles and magnificent, unexplainable experiences that I know that there's something more in this world than what we can touch and see and feel.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's, I think we're both kind of struggling to put it
Oh
into
yeah, this
like,
is a big challenge, and this is what
it
Thriver
is
Talks
a
is for.
challenge. Exactly. Like, we're just trying to
Yeah.
articulate it the best we can. But
And also,
I think
disclaimer, I want to make sure that people who are listening to this and who do follow a religion, we're not anti-religion. I think
ever,
you
no
also said it
way.
too, and I just we don't want to offend anyone. This is what Thriver Talks is for, is just to have open discussions.
Right.
And I just feel like God is so great that I I can't even put it into words. Like, there is no title, because
Mm-hmm.
he's so great. I almost feel uncomfortable giving God a title, giving God rules, giving a blueprint to it. And when I think of religion and spirituality, I feel like religion's like almost like a like there's something greater out there, and as humans feel so uncomfortable because we can't identify it. So here's a religion, because it's a
Here's
blueprint to
here's some rules.
here's some rules and some like almost like a little plan for you to follow, so you can reach that awakening, that, and so that you could experience God. But that's not the only path, and
Right.
that's not the only way, but it's a way. But I feel
Yes.
like we're all spiritual beings, we're all
There's
spiritual.
so many different paths, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
I think what I was trying to say. I don't know if I
Mm-hmm.
got that across like
I think you said it great.
clearly, but like so many different paths. Like we say, there's so many paths to healing, there's so many paths to God.
Yes.
And like you said, I think it's so important that you said we're not in any way knocking religion.
Yes.
Like, sometimes I'll walk to the Catholic church around the corner
Mm-hmm.
and pop in and sit through a service,
And
or I'll go
sometimes
with,
I'll go to the temple with V
yeah,
and his mom and his parents, and I feel the power of
yeah,
God within the Hindu temples, and I'm sure the same for you.
same. Like, I'll sometimes go to temple with Mark, and
Mm-hmm.
on the high holidays we go to temple,
Mm-hmm.
and it I just I feel God there too. So I feel like God is everywhere. He is everywhere, not I
He,
think.
because he is
So
all.
I could connect in a Catholic church, in a mosque, in a temple, for me
Mm-hmm.
personally. I just like God is God, God is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just don't personally put limits on it.
Yep.
And I think, like I said, like sometimes like religion does cause some division.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think like spirituality is more all encompassing as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like, putting things into boxes. It's like is one, is the best way to put it. And um, knowing that we're all part of this like huge, like intricate, like fabrication of
Mm-hmm.
life, like we're all connected. And um, like even today, like I know it sounds really cheesy, but I had to go run some errands before we recorded, and I just said I'm gonna smile at every person that
Yeah.
I see, just because I want to like spread God or
Yeah.
good energy or love. And it's so contagious, like I was literally pushing my cart, said hi to everybody, smiled at everybody, and then to me that's God, and
Yes. And that's God's
it
work. And that's when we say we're here to serve, a lot of people are like, oh, okay, Nally and Steph are on this mission, serving with their book, with their podcast, doing these big, extravagant, events and things like that. But that's serving, like smiling at every single
100%.
person you see and spreading joy and spreading light. Um,
Yes. And it's so contagious, and to me that is God. And I think that sometimes even with like, okay, what's the difference between prayer and meditation? Like if you're super religious, you might think meditation is like some woo woo thing.
it's the
But to
same
me, it's kind of
thing.
like the same thing. Like for me personally, I think prayer is like you're asking, meditation, you can receive the answers, like quieting your mind so you can hear the God within and hear the answers to your prayers to then give you the guidance and clarity that you need for whatever
Mm-hmm.
you're seeking. But I think it's the same. It's just quieting the mind and asking. I personally like certain prayers. Like I once heard this saying that I'm not a beggar, I'm a believer. So I never
Mm.
say, please, please, please. I always say, thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
So it's almost like an act of faith, like you're proclaiming that thy will be done, So I always, my prayers are always thank you for my healing. Thank you for our good
Same.
scan results. I prayed for your results this morning. I prayed for my results this morning, and I just gave thanks ahead of time. Um, so I really think that, I'm struggling as excited as I was to talk about this. I'm
Yeah.
struggling with articulating, but yeah, I really believe too. Like I know you put me on to the Gabby Bernstein super
Mm-hmm.
attractor, and she really articulated it really well in the book, like the different angels and how you can call on deceased loved ones, and asking for signs through prayer.
Yeah.
And I think once you get to a place where you're really in it and you're really connected to God and your angels, the signs like will almost like knock your freaking socks off because it's so
Insane.
like in your face,
Mm-hmm.
once you're really in tune. But all to say that I really believe that I most identify with spirituality because that to me is all encompassing and just a
Amen.
better way for me to describe my personal beliefs.
Same. Same. And that is just having faith. We have faith that we're protected, that we're guided,
Mm-hmm.
that we're not
Mm-hmm.
alone, that there is something beyond us, that we are not, at the center of the universe. We are one with
Mm-hmm.
it. So when you speak of Gabby Bernstein, she speaks a lot about the universe. The universe has your back, but she does mention in her book that when she says universe and she says God, it's all the same, right? And she's
Source, universe,
source,
God.
yeah, whatever you feel called to call it. And she speaks a lot about signs. And I think, Steph, you and I have bonded a lot on, just spotting signs together and being so aligned in like the signs we
Mm,
see and then actually following the signs and experiencing them manifest together. I think that's something that really took our friendship to another level because we were like, wow. And
100%.
especially when we are together, I find it's even more um, powerful and obvious,
Yes.
like in your face. But maybe, do you want to share any stories? Like, for one, what are your signs? I know you have two in particular.
I know they sound really silly, but
Not at
um
all.
well for one, um I know I always reference this, but when I was sent home to pass,
Because it's a very
maybe.
big moment in your life. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much that happened during that time. But like 5 years ago, I literally spent an entire summer in my apartment praying for signs. And
Mm-hmm.
I literally sometimes, and this is what I really want to say, and I tell all my friends, like, sometimes we pray for signs, like, for whatever it is, not even cancer. You need signs, and the signs are there, but it's not how in your mind you see your life's roadmap, so you don't follow it, and the
Mm-hmm.
signs aren't always comfortable. Like, they're not always things that, would be within our limited understanding. So if you really are praying for something and praying for the signs, you need to be totally open. You know what I mean? Like, if the sign says, like, for me, so back to that certain period in my life, I prayed for signs, and I somehow, I don't even know who gave me the book Radical Remission, and I, you know, found Dr. Wong, and
Yeah.
through my friend Luana at the time, You Can Thrive. And anyhow, like, I just followed the breadcrumb trail, and I followed what I call the breadcrumb trail,
Yeah.
um, and the signs. And it was like, okay, go meet Dr. Wong at Rite Aid on the corner in Astoria, Queens. I'm like, what the hell? Like, never in a million years would I think that'd be my sign. But I was so open because I just said, God, show me the way, and I'll do whatever that is. I will fly to freaking Thailand or Africa to do whatever I had to do at that time. And I just kept following the signs. And that's essentially like what saved my life. If you listen to episode 1, you can get the full story. But there's so many signs. But one thing that really was
Yeah.
crossover with you was, so when I was first diagnosed, because I was misdiagnosed, I was diagnosed as being HER2 positive. So at the time, Herceptin had just was a newer drug, and they recommended Herceptin and chemo. And I was like, well, I'm not really comfortable starting chemo right now.
Yeah.
Not encouraging that as my own journey. So I started to take the Herceptin. But on my very first infusion, I was so nervous because it was my first time, as we all are or were when we got our first infusion. And I remember my mom saying, Stephanie, like, so we're literally down, in a hospital. You're usually like downstairs, like in a concrete freaking laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And well, that's what it was then. And she's like, there's two ladybugs on your shoulders. I was like, what? Some of this freaking, there's no windows. We're inside a hospital. And I turn around, and there's like a ladybug, two ladybugs, like one on the wall, like above each shoulder. And at the time, I just thought, like, wow, that's really interesting because there's no window or anything. So I always just thought ladybugs are a sign that, or my angels are there, that everything was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward to like years later, like 8 years later with you, my first time I was ever going to meet Mama Oracle.
Yes.
Nalie was taking me to go get Reiki with Mama Oracle, and I was really excited. And anyhow, right prior to us starting our session, it was my first time meeting her, and we had our little talk, and I shared that experience with her, which was, I don't even know how it came up, but maybe we're talking about signs. And she did my session for like hour or whatever it is. And then as soon as I got up, like sat up on the table, she's like, you're never gonna believe this, but turn around, and I turn around, and on the window there's two ladybugs. And she's like, this has never happened in a session. I don't even know
Mm-hmm.
how the ladybugs got in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah,
remember
the windows are fully closed.
fully closed.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that sounds maybe like a silly story, but to me in that moment, it was just confirmation that we're still here with you.
Yeah.
Um, and I pray for signs all the time. Like, I really believe I lost a really close friend, one of our friends, Michelle, who I was very, very close to. And
Mm-hmm.
I always pray for her to show me that she's still
Present.
around, and like the signs like are insane. It's like
Yeah.
total confirmation constantly. So I have so many different signs,
Yeah.
numbers and
But
rainbows
for
and all
the
kinds of things.
ladybugs, however, what's also crazy is that often, we're constantly communicating with each other, and you'll tell me like, I'm going through a tough time, or I know you're nervous about a scan or something like that, and you'll tell me like, oh, I'm praying for a sign, and then we'll hang up, and then I think there were three instances. One was I was walking Neo outside, and he kept like sniffing in like a big pile of like leaves, like, you know, Montreal fall time with like the leaves fall off the trees. There's stacks and stacks of leaves just everywhere. And he was just sniffing in a particular place. And then I went and I'm like, Neo, like, what are you sniffing at? And I checked, and exactly where his nose was in like this big pile of leaves was the ladybug. Remember?
Yeah,
And
you
I was
sent me
like,
the
oh my God. And I took a
picture.
picture. And this is like finding a needle in a haystack. Like, come on now. And then the other one was winter. And so snow is everywhere. It's cold. We're in a condo, and so we're not even close to the ground, and nowhere near windows. And I believe it was my nephew, well, my best friend's son, came running to
Oh
me. She's like,
yeah.
look, and in his hand, his little tiny little like 4-year-old
Oh,
hand, he had a ladybug. But I'm like, how is this even possible that there's a ladybug? And then I can't remember another instance where it's like just like impossible places to find ladybugs. They were there, and I would send it to you, and instantly you would write me back saying like, this is the sign I needed. So it's almost like I would give you the signs of your ladybug.
always,
Mm-hmm.
always. I think like that we have that connection,
Yeah.
for sure, which is rare.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like whatever you can kind of call your sign, like whatever
Yeah.
you decide your sign is going to be. If it's in that numbers, we always see alignment with like 1111,
Yeah.
111. It could be a song that comes on the
Yeah. So for
radio.
me, I don't have a particular sign. Like, I don't have a ladybug, I don't have the rainbow. But when I ask and I pray and I ask my spirit guides, or I ask God to just show me the way, give me a sign that I'm on the right path, I get very specific signs because I asked for them. I'm just like, just tell me, you know, like, and that's what Gabby Bernstein teaches, is that you can ask for very specific signs. And I remember one example again when we were together was when you brought me to see Dr. Wong. And for me, like, he's in New York, you
Oh,
know,
yay. Love
so
this one.
yeah, being from Montreal, having to go to New York frequently, having to pay for USD, you know, which is quite expensive, having to, I mean, have it shipped across the border and it going through customs, there's extra fees. All to say, I was a little hesitant to go like pursuing this path with Chinese herbs because it's expensive. I knew that you had to be consistent. Is it something that I'm not just going to take it for a couple of months? I knew this was an investment. And so remember, you and I were so late as usual. And
Yeah.
you took
Wait,
me
I have to say really quickly too. So it was my first time taking you to a random street corner in Queens. So I was so
exactly.
nervous too. Like, oh, I hope she doesn't think
Yeah,
this
you
is
had to
weird.
warn me like 100 times. I'm telling you, just trust me. We're going to like a street corner. It's almost like I'm not doing like a drug trade or anything. I swear, this is legit. So I was even like a little skeptical because of that, because you kept like
Right.
warning me. And then we were late, and so I think this, you were from LA and you were just going to New York, like you weren't living in New York yet.
Not
Remember?
yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
So you took me on the wrong train, and we had to
Oh
like
yeah.
go back and run around, and then we were like sprinting. At that point I was still a little out of breath. I'm like, where's this girl taking me? We run down the stairs, and then you're like, oh, I don't know, the R train, the F train, what was it?
It was the NQ or the R to
Okay,
Queens, I
anyways, and
think.
you're like, this is the one, and we had to like run and jump into the train. The doors close behind us. We sit down, and then there were those what do you
A
call them?
band. It was like a
Yeah, like
full on
the
like
buskers, right? Who is that what you call them? Those who sing
there
for money and
yeah, there was like peddlers, I don't know what you call them, but
yeah,
it was like a group, like a soulful group of
yes,
like 4 or 5 men playing
men.
these instruments.
Yeah, and they were singing. You know, I think they were singing, right?
Yeah,
And
singing.
and beautifully, and
Yes.
they kept coming closer to us and just staring at me and Steph. And the lyric was, "You're on
You're
the
on the
right
right
road
path
now."
now.
It was on. You're on the right road now. You're on the right road now. And they were just clicking their hands, looking at me. You're on the right road now. And I was like, oh my god.
Oh, snap.
Oh, snort. Like, okay. I'm on the right road. And I remember we looked at each other and I'm like, okay, like, I guess this is the
Like,
road and the path that
like
I'm meant to be
literally in your
taking.
face, sign, let me sing
Mm-hmm.
it to you that you are on the right path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that stuff, like examples like that, happened to
Mhm.
me all
All
the
the time.
time. And even like
Yeah.
another quick example was when I was changing oncologists, and then I don't know if I told the story yet on Thriver Talks, but my initial oncologist was suggesting more chemotherapy because
Mhm.
the CDK4/6 inhibitors were apparently like dangerous for me because of the effect it was having on my white blood
Yeah.
cells. And then my new oncologist was like, no, let's just take this risk because I think it's going to really do you good and it's going to help. And I think it's safer than doing more chemotherapy. And so I would imagine like two oncologists who are fully
Total
experienced
opposite
and saying completely different, with completely different
approaches.
approaches and suggestions. So then I was nervous because I was like, oh my gosh, like, should I continue to take a CDK4/6 inhibitor? What if it, like, my previous oncologist said I could die if I continued to take it, and I didn't know
He
what to do.
literally like said those
Yeah,
words too.
yeah.
Like,
Like, yeah, if I were to prescribe that, I would kill you, is what he had said. So imagine me having to take this leap. So I was like, God, give me a sign. What do I do? And so I remember there's so many signs that happened in between that. But then upon receiving the bottle of my CDK4/6 inhibitor, you know how it all has a prescription number? So mine was RX 111111, and then like random numbers after. And I see 1111 all the time. If you follow me on Instagram, you know, because I often screenshot it and share it with you. But yeah, 1111 actually means you're on the right path. It means that your angels are telling you, okay, don't worry, we're with you, you're guided, just keep going. And very powerful numbers when you see one in a sequence like that. So my prescription was RX 111111 and something else.
so you knew, like
So I
it was
knew.
just confirmation, but you yourself have to be open, like to
Mm-hmm.
receiving that sign, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's definitely a relationship when with your spirit guides, God,
Yeah,
angels,
God, angel,
that
whatever you
you're
want to call it.
open to
Mm-hmm.
receiving. I have one more story. Do you have time for it?
Yeah, yeah, whatever. We're
Okay.
chatting. Thriver Talks.
So this is wild. So right before I found out that I was misdiagnosed, right? I knew something wasn't right. My intuition was like super antennas up. So this is so crazy. So I'm trying to remember how it happened. But long story short, at the time I was living in New York and I was commuting to see my mom in Atlanta. So I was in Atlanta coming back to New York and I'm waiting in the airport. I'm so exhausted. And I'm being honest with you. In addition to being exhausted, I was having so much anxiety around that time that I had taken a lorazepam to get on the flight because I'm like, okay, I'm having anxiety and I want to sleep on the flight. And
Mm.
so maybe, yeah, this was like definitely around the turning point of or around the time I found out I was misdiagnosed. So I'm in the Atlanta airport. There's like really crazy weather conditions. So the flight keeps getting pushed back. And I'm like, great, I just popped this freaking lorazepam. I feel like a space cadet. Like I need to be like really on point and listen to the people or the announcements for the flight. So I don't know. I've never done this in my life. So, you know how sometimes like two gates will be super close to each other. So I'm like boarding a flight to freaking Missouri. Okay. Or I don't even, it was the total wrong place. So I go present my ticket and she's like, no, you're, you're not going here. Detroit. It was Detroit.
Okay.
So I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely not going to Detroit. So the lady behind me did the exact same thing. It was this woman, this black woman with braids. I'm just like describing how I remember her. She had like a starter jacket on and she did the same thing. So the lady told her, no, you're also on the other flight. And so I was like, okay, at least it wasn't just me. And she's like, girl, like, I don't know what just happened. So we end up sitting next to each other to wait to our flight and we start chatting. And I was just like, how did we almost like get on the wrong flight? And so we start talking and she's like, you know, where are you from? And I said, I'm from California. And she's like, oh, you guys have like really good weed in California. And I said, yes,
Yes,
yes, we
we
do.
did.
Yes, we do. And she said, I'm really interested in weed right now because I just lost my best friend to breast cancer. So I've been really researching how weed can help cancer. And I'm like, what is going on right now? Like, this lady just mentioned breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at her and I was like, okay, this is really weird that you mentioned breast cancer because I have breast cancer. And she couldn't believe it because I look normal. And I even had to like prove to her, like I like pulled up, something on my phone. And so she said, I'd become really interested in learning about natural healing because I feel like I could have helped my friend and she passed away. And she said, we've known each other for such a long time and no one, her oncologist didn't really prepare us that she was dying. She said that they thought she was doing well and all of a sudden it was like, go home and get your affairs in order. And she died like quickly. And you could tell she was obviously still mourning and in a really not a good place. So she's talking about her friend and she pulls out a picture on her iPad to show me a picture of her friend. And her friend is surrounded by their sorority, their college sorority. And I'm looking at the picture of her friend in the hospital and I'm looking at the walls and the pictures in the background. I'm like, that's my hospital. So I was like, wait, is she at, should I just say the hospital?
Sure.
Does it matter?
No.
So I was like, at the time, I was just like, is she getting treated at Sloan Kettering?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, she is. And I was like, oh, wow. She's like, how do you know? And I just said, well, I'm there so often. I could just tell when you open the picture. I know that hospital so well.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, who is her doctor? I don't know if I want to say this. I've never disclosed this.
Yeah.
But basically, her doctor was my oncologist.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy shit, no way. So I was like, there's no way, there's no way, there's no way. So she started pulling up email chains when her friend was still alive saying, Dr. So-and-so's telling me to go on this treatment now. All to say I had been praying for a sign if I should stay with my oncologist or leave. And I met a random woman who we almost got on the wrong flight with in the Atlanta airport that her friend had just died under the care of my then oncologist. And she was basically, prior to telling me, very negligent. And this is the woman that sent me home to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And if that wasn't like the biggest sign, I literally, like in that moment, I called my mom, I called Amanda, I called everybody. I'm like, I'm done with this oncologist. So all to say, sorry if that was a long drawn out story.
Huge sign though.
Huge
it was almost
sign.
like an example. Like this is what will happen to you if you don't get out of there right now.
Right.
Like,
and it was my sign. It was like, I knew something was wrong. Do I stay or do I go? And as soon as I landed in New York, Dr. Wong had been telling me to go seek Dr. Borgen's advice. I made an appointment immediately. And that was the beginning of uncovering my misdiagnosis. Yeah. And that's a story I've never really shared. I mean, I think I've shared it with you, but like not publicly. But that was like, and to this day, that woman's name is Jody. I have her number in my phone and I'm just like, you're an angel. Like, you don't understand how detrimental that encounter was because like you saved my life.
And what are the odds, right? Like that you guys
getting on a plane to Detroit, okay, like high off of lorazepam. Because at that time I was having like such severe anxiety. So I think that was also my intuition telling me, alarming me that something was wrong, that I had to medicate myself. And just a wild story, but all to say when you pray and the signs can be so in your face, like your signs and my signs. And then without question, you know what your next move is.
Yeah, we're all connected. There's we are energy, and the energy around us, it's like there's always messages being sent our way. I don't know how to explain it, but it doesn't surprise me, because I know you went when you go inside, it's like you get messages from outside.
All the time. All the time.
When do you feel, I mean, first of all, when it comes to signs, like I swear I could give you 10 more and I know you could give me 100 more. So I can't wait for you guys to read our book because we do give great examples.
Yes.
But I'll just say there's just so much that happened to us, and I'm sure so many of you listening could relate too. But I'm curious to know, when do you feel closest to God?
It's a hard question because I feel, okay, so sometimes I have this guilt because I don't get on my hands and knees and pray every day.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because I feel like I'm always connected to God. Like
Yeah.
I talk to God all day long. Like like literally.
No, hell yeah.
I'm
Conversations with
constantly
God
like,
all
thank you,
day.
God, God. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like, okay, I don't get on my hands and knees in prayer. I don't pray like your typical way. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
there's a right or wrong way to pray. But most connected, I think when I'm in nature,
I was gonna say
like
the same. Mm-hmm.
definitely like this past trip, we just got back from Turks and Caicos and for my 40th birthday. And just when I'm in nature, when it's still and when it's quiet, like be still and know that I am God is one of my favorite verses. And just seeing like how could you not be in the most magnificent landscape and like I always look and be like, how could you not know that God is
God is
real? Like,
real.
look at
Mm-hmm.
this beauty around us. The nature has such an innate intelligence,
And it's
um,
perfect. Nature is
it's so perfect.
perfect. There's nothing that we need to do to make sure that this world
Nothing.
functions. There's this natural intelligence that allows everything to work smoothly. The circle of life,
Yeah.
right?
It's like you look at like, I'm just using these examples because I just got back, but we found these beautiful like conch shells. And if you look at like the intricacy,
Mm-hmm.
I have one here, like this, like so beautiful. Like I brought this
Wow.
back and you look at these pieces and you're just like, God, everything is so beautiful and
Mm-hmm.
perfect without us
Mm-hmm.
touching it and disrupting it.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely in nature, like
Mm-hmm.
it could be anywhere too. Like my favorite is obviously a beach, and growing up in California, like a beach was my stomping grounds. But even now that I'm on the East Coast, like going into the woods and the mountains, how you and I just spent our writers retreat, it's just like I just see beauty everywhere. But when I'm in nature and silenced from the busy world and stores and houses and cars and this, and when you're really just in a beautiful setting, it's just like I feel so connected to everything around me.
Yeah. Same when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
nature too. I feel it's hard not to believe in God and not to believe that, there's a higher power beyond us. I remember going to Costa Rica and going on this tour in the rainforest, and the guy
Mm.
asked us, like, why do you think there are holes in this plant? And it was like on the leaf, and everyone thought it was because of the bugs that would eat the plant. And they're like, no, it's because the plant, when it needs sunlight on their lower leaves, they open up and they
Wow.
create holes in their upper leaves so that the light can pass and feed their
Wow.
bottom leaves. And I'm like, how does a plant know how to do that? Do you know what I mean? And then
Wow.
you just start
Yeah.
thinking about, like, oh, there's this
And we think we have
natural
it
intelligence.
all figured out, you
We
know?
don't. And it's like arrogant of us to think that we
I
do.
feel like we've just scratched the surface on
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. And back to religion versus spirituality, the reason why I consider myself more spiritual than religion is because I'm comfortable with the unknown. I'm comfortable with not having to label everything, not having to understand everything. It is what it is. I am that I am. And the fact that sometimes religion puts things in a box and has very
Mm-hmm.
specific rule book, I didn't personally feel comfortable with it. But as so long as but at the end of the day, we're all in the same journey trying to achieve the same thing. But I feel closest to God, yes, in nature, but also in stillness and when I'm alone and
Mm-hmm.
when there's nothing around me and that it is quiet and I'm just alone in my thoughts, that's when I feel even closer to God. It's just me and God at
Mm-hmm.
that point. And I feel like it's like that instant, it's like a channel, instant communication, an instant link between me and God is when I'm alone
Mm-hmm.
and it's quiet and it's still. And I don't know, I always feel the presence when I don't have any other noise or distraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the whole point of us talking about faith and spirituality is because Thriver Talks and the Thriver's Guide is about how to heal and live your best life beyond cancer. So I guess to kind of conclude this episode, how do you feel spirituality, religion, faith, all of that has helped you on your journey?
I always say that faith has been stronger than any treatment I've ever taken, whether in a hospital, in a clinical setting, or in even an alternative therapy. Faith is my number one, my number one. Um, I feel like I said, it's like it was me and God, on this journey. It still is God and I on this journey. So I feel like my faith was bigger than my fear because I clung on to my relationship with God, and I even sometimes, I know I say this, but I feel like believe is not even a strong enough word, like knowing that I had God within me and I had this protection, was for me the most healing. And so above treatment, above anything, my relationship with God is what I know that has gotten me this far, and I'm not saying that others who have passed on, their faith wasn't big enough. No way am I saying that. But I also think death is the beginning of something else, but that's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
I just feel like, it's been so challenging to put this into words, but my faith with God and my spirituality is my number one thing that has gotten me this far today. So it's been the most important part of my journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
You feel the same?
I feel like back to my example about nature and being in awe of how of this natural intelligence and how there's something without any effort when it comes to our bodies that like we're not whether we're thinking about it or not, there's this natural intelligence that's healing us at all times. And so again, when I think about, statistics, when I think about what someone will say, whether it's an oncologist, a health practitioner, or another human being who tries to tell you the limitations of your diagnosis,
Yes.
it's hard for me to believe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how spirituality and faith and God and religion has really it's helped me understand that there's always anything is possible. And if that means that, I actually believe maybe that's how Jesus rose from the dead, and how I don't know, all these examples in every religion that just seem like miraculous is because I witness these miracles every day because of Thriver Talks, because of this community of walking miracles where, impossible just doesn't seem like it exists. There's no such thing as impossible. And whether it's Anita Morjani, who had who practically rose from the dead, as she was in a coma and was told that she was going to die, and then she came back, and then all her cancer was cleared. There's just so many stories that just goes to show that there's a higher power that's working at all times, and it's out of our control. And the reason why we don't have the words to describe it is because there are no words to describe it. But for me on my journey, it just makes me feel like anything's possible, right?
So true. Anything is possible. It's like all over the Bible, that all things are possible.
Which
to
gives
those
me
who
hope.
believe. Yes. Yes. So I hope we articulated it.
Oh man, that was hard. Again, and I don't want people to think that when when at the beginning of this episode, I was talking about Catholicism and how I stopped going to church every Sunday because of what my priest said. I don't want people to think that all priests are like that, and I don't want people to think that people who follow Islam or who are Muslim reject other religions. I was just talking about my personal story and experience. But I think anyone listening, if you don't believe in anything, I feel like there's some soul searching to do in terms of just like believe in something. Do you know what I mean? Especially if you're going through something traumatic, or I guess most of us listening has a cancer diagnosis, I just feel like it's important that you find something that you personally believe in, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Allah, whether it's whatever you...
Mary, Buddha,
all the Hindu gods, whether it's the universe, the stars, angels. Just find something that you personally believe in, to realize that you're supported, you're guided, you're not alone, and more importantly, that you're important, that you have purpose, that you're in this world for a reason. And everyone has a different story, everyone has a different mission, everyone has a different path, everyone has a different way to serve, whether it is just saying hi and smiling to everyone you see as you run errands at the grocery store, or whether it is writing a book and inspiring tens of thousands of people through speeches, or being a Mother Teresa, or being the girl at the coffee shop. We're all here for a purpose. You are important. You are loved.
Yes.
And to us, that's what
we
spirituality
are
is.
love.
We are love. We are love.
God
is love. Yeah. Anything to add to that, Miss Stephanie?
No, I just, like I said, I was like really excited to talk, and I didn't realize how challenging it would be to put everything into words. And I hope that everyone receives our message with our intent behind it. And again, in no way are we saying anything negative about religion. I think it's all beautiful. We're just talking about our own personal paths or experiences with religion and spirituality, and what our personal beliefs are. And I think that our differences make us beautiful, and that's it. I just think cling on to something that gives you faith that all things are possible, and that's like the biggest piece of it all. So
amen.
All
right, so signing off.
So for anyone who wants to share this episode or knows somebody in need of this message, please share our talk. And subscribe to our newsletter at www.thethriversguide.com. And every week in your inbox, you'll be the first to know about all of our new episodes. And please remember to rate and review us on all major podcast platforms.
Don't forget, where there's a Thriver's will, there's a Thriver's way. We'll talk to you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.